I've many times had the experience of having somebody call me right after they get the diagnosis and don't know what to do next. And then we're able to spend time on the phone with them. This is how we can support you. These are the programs and services that are available to you free of cost. And just that knowledge that they are not alone, that there's somebody there who is going to help them through this disease can make a world of difference.
Hi, I'm Jeff Holden. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. Our purpose and passion is to highlight a nonprofit organization in each weekly episode, giving that organization an opportunity to tell their story in their words to better inform and educate the respective communities they serve, as well as provide one more tool for them to share their message to constituents and donors. Our goal is to help build stronger communities through shared voices and to both encourage and support the growth of local nonprofit organizations through podcasting. Thanks to our partners for their support in getting these stories told. SMUD, Sacramento Metropolitan Utility District's Shine Awards program benefiting nonprofits for energy efficiency. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations, and Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Those three words may not mean much to you until I abbreviate or align them differently. How about ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease? Now it likely sends a chill down your spine as it's a well-known disease with no cure. In this episode, we'll embark on a journey into the world of ALS, a formidable neurodegenerative disease that affects thousands of lives across the globe. We'll grow our understanding of this complex condition from its initial diagnosis to its unpredictable progression. ALS challenges individuals with a sharp mind and an unresponsive body. Through powerful personal stories, we'll illuminate the emotional and physical hurdles faced by patients and their families, revealing the profound impact this disease has on daily life. I'm joined by two remarkable women, Nancy Wakefield, Managing Director of Care Services with the ALS Association, and Ann Graef, a board member and caregiver who courageously shares her personal story through her late husband's battle with ALS. Together, they'll highlight the indispensable role of community support and the importance of early engagement with organizations that provide vital resources and care. We'll learn how ALS is the resource for information and research into this disease and the support the organization provides to those families experiencing the challenges ALS creates. Nancy Wakefield, Ann Graef, welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
And excited to have you here because it's a topic and a conversation that isn't had as often as I think it needs to be had. And what we're going to be talking about is ALS. I will not try to pronounce it. I'll let one of you two do that. And if you could address for us, first of all, what that name is, and then it'll be very clear why we always call it ALS, and just give us a high-level view of what this disease is.
So it's amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. And so, yeah, that's why we call it ALS.
Mm-hmm.
If you can believe, people still will recognize it as Lou Gehrig's disease. Even though I think a lot of people don't know who Lou Gehrig is any longer. If you say Lou Gehrig's disease, usually people will know what you're talking about. It is a neurodegenerative disease that basically affects the brain's ability to communicate with the muscles. So slowly, a person will lose the ability to move their muscles, their limbs, the ability to talk, and then eat, and then breathe.
Mm-hmm. So it is an incurable situation at this point in time, and a diagnosis, unfortunately, does not have a resolve. There's no resolution.
There isn't. It is always fatal at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Usually people are given 2 to 5 years.
And if I read correctly on some of the information I was trying to absorb, it doesn't impact the senses because they're not muscle driven. So you can still smell and touch and feel and see, which is amazing to think that that piece continues where it's anything that muscle related is the degenerative or deteriorating part of the disease.
Yeah, you're correct. It doesn't. And not only that, it also, in most cases, does not affect the brain. So the person is the same person, aware of everything that's happening to them. And there is a small percentage, less than 10%, that may also show signs of FTD, frontal temporal dementia.
Okay. I was going to ask if there are any correlations or if they've seen anything in research to date that looks like either Alzheimer's or dementia or some sort of coding of the neuroplasticity elements of the brain. And I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what we can see is that there are a lot of illnesses and a lot of diagnoses that fall under kind of that same neuromuscular and neurodegenerative, heading, and can look a lot very similar to one another. So, which makes it very difficult to get a diagnosis.
I was just going to ask about that.
Yeah, it can take quite a while. We're getting better and better at it. But because there are no tests that tell you can't take a blood test and it'll tell you, oh, yeah, you have ALS. That doesn't exist at this point. Because of that, it can take quite a while. And it's a matter of kind of eliminating everything else until you come down to, okay, it's nothing else, it's ALS. Now, watching the progression of the disease will then definitively tell a doctor, yes, that is the correct diagnosis, but there isn't a test at this time.
To make it real to people, what I say is, so imagine you're sitting there and you have an itch on your face, but you can't move your arm to itch that. How does that feel? And as the disease progresses, let's say you're sitting with your arms and one of them falls off the armchair. Well, you can't pick it up and put it back on. All these little things that you take for granted, things you do with your hand, that doesn't happen. Imagine looking at your hand and you're telling it to pick something up and nothing is happening. That makes it real.
And the brain is still functioning, saying
that's correct.
It should, but it doesn't.
That's correct.
And you're perfectly aware of the fact that you can't do this.
Right. Actually, you can see the muscles twitching down the arm. They call them fasciculations.
Yeah, sometimes it's visible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Meaning the brain's trying to tell it to do
it's
something, but it
can't get through.
It can't get through.
And people often will ask me, like, well, what are the signs that, everybody wants to know?
Right.
Because, I've had some issues, people will think that way. And usually, as I said, it's a progressive disease. So it'll start with something small. So if it's going to start, let's say, in your hand, you may suddenly realize that you're dropping things. You are not able to hold your pencil like you were before. If it starts in your foot, maybe you're finding that you're tripping a lot. We find that a lot of people have very active lives. So I hear often, like, I'm a runner and I just kept tripping, or, I'm a tennis player and I just wasn't having the strength. And then sometimes it starts with the voice. And so what you'll see with that is that somebody's speech will start to sound different. Usually it sounds like they've had a few too many cocktails and they're slurring. And people, if people hear them, they may not say anything for a while because they're thinking, oh, wow.
There's a problem, right?
Yeah.
And you'll notice when Nancy's talking, she says, for some people, it starts here. And for some other people, it starts there. It does make it difficult to diagnose because there isn't one clear path from beginning to end. It's different.
Exactly.
I mean, some people will retain a portion all the way up until the end. They just don't ever lose that one particular piece, depending on how long they live.
And by piece, you mean that element of movement or whatever it may be.
Yes.
Okay.
So, you may have someone who completely loses the ability to talk, but remains mobile,
Mm.
or vice versa, right? They may lose all ability to move, but can still talk throughout the disease. Or maybe they just, lose the ability to use their legs, but continue to be able to use their arms. It just can look different for
That
anyone.
unpredictability is very difficult.
And it certainly makes it much more difficult to diagnose then, too, because
Yes.
other diseases look similar. You may see that vocal situation with Parkinson's, as we all know
Yes,
people with that
exactly.
disease.
Mhm.
And the same with some motor skills, you're dropping things, et cetera, et cetera. So it's certainly got to be frustrating in the diagnostic process because you don't know. And there's
Exactly.
not a test, a blood test or something simple to say it's this.
Hmm. Hmm.
And did I see that there seems to be a higher propensity in military?
So veterans are twice as likely to get ALS. We don't know why yet. This is
Mm-hmm.
part of why, clinical trials are so important, why funding research is so important. The ALS Association is the largest funder worldwide of ALS research, and that's the only way we're going to be able to, figure out, why do people get ALS?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that we're seeing many more veterans than, the normal population getting ALS?
Let's move on because I think we've done a good job of framing the disease,
Hmm.
at least for the naive observer, the casual observer who just is, what about this?
Yeah.
Because this is where the positive side of it starts. And there is an organization like ALS, and you started down the path of it's the research resource,
Hmm.
trying to find some solution, some mechanism that allows either a better diagnostic process and or possibly some sort of relief for the disease, either extension of life with the disease, hopefully at some point in time, the benefit of a cure for
Hmm.
elements of it or whatever we know once we learn what we learn. Tell us a little bit about what that looks like with the organization.
Yeah, I mean, you're right when you say it's a bit of a relief. I've many times had the experience of having somebody call me right after they get the diagnosis, like literally walking out of the doctor's office. They get in their car and they're, trying to figure out, what is this? Or people who have been sitting with the diagnosis for a while and don't know what to do next, and they get a hold of us, and then we're able to spend time on the phone with them, and can, speak to this, but we're able to spend time with them and let them know, you know this is what's available, this is how we can support you, these are the programs and services that, are available to you free of cost, and help guide them for, next steps.
Mm-hmm.
And just that knowledge that they are not alone, that there's somebody there who is going to help them through this, through this disease, can make a world of difference. I mean, I wish I could explain better what that's like to first get that phone call, and then at the end of the phone call to hear the relief of somebody who knows now I'm not alone. And then, you know, moving further on, if they attend a support group, then realizing there's a whole community out there, because it can feel very lonely. It can feel like I'm the only one going through this and nobody understands. That's where support groups can be, so important.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, that is so significant. And Nancy, you've been with the organization how long now?
15 years.
Okay, so you've seen a lot of these calls. You've had a lot of people
Yeah.
come through. And Ann, your husband passed how long ago?
14 years ago.
Okay, so you've been involved for at least 15, 16 years.
Yes, 16 years. And I was going to say that the neurologists are the ones who are telling their patients, you need to get in contact with the ALS Association. That was two things they said to my husband and myself when we were, at the end of our visit. They said, number one, they looked at him and said, you need to retire. And they said, and number two, they said, and there's a reason for that. And number two, they said, you need to get in touch with the ALS Association, which we did, because not only do you feel lonely, you're scared.
Sure.
you're scared. You contact them. You get the initial information. You're online. You're looking it up, and it's frightening to see pictures of. I remember my husband saying, "That's going to be me,"
Mm-hmm.
and I'm thinking next to him, and how do I take care of this individual while they're sick? How am I going to do this? And what's it going to do to the two of us? What is our future going to look like? It is. It's scary. It's lonely. And to know that when you call them, there's someone to say, okay, why don't you come in? Or I'll meet you somewhere and we can start talking about how we can help you and what services we have.
Yeah, and nothing is worse than the uncertainty of it all. Nothing.
Yeah. That hasn't left me even in 16 years. I remember that 2-week period where you just wanted to hide. You wanted to, I mean, it was over Christmas too. And you have to deal with it.
Right.
You learn really quickly, you can't wait.
Right.
But there is someone there who's going to be holding your hand. So there's a Nancy there that's holding your hand, taking you through, who I know that I can call. I mean, they respond to calls, just like that.
Which is amazing because that is what you need.
Mm-hmm.
You need that embrace from somebody to just say, okay, we got you. We understand it. We can walk you through it. We'll at least help clarify the lack of knowledge that you have on it, understandable so, and we'll introduce you to the steps in the process. Let's get into that a little bit. Now, your territory is huge, if I'm not mistaken.
So, well, it's a national organization.
Yes.
This particular Sacramento office covers 24 counties in Northern California.
So northernmost to eastern, give us our
Yeah,
scope.
it goes all the way up to the Oregon border, and then as far south as Stockton area.
Okay.
And then out to, we border like Sonoma County. Yeah. So it's a large area, but I should also mention that we also serve people in the surrounding areas. So if somebody calls us from Reno, and we will work, with them as well. Usually people from that area come to a clinic here in Sacramento. We can talk about the clinics.
Yeah, we're going to get there in just a second.
Yeah.
It just helps with the logistics for someone who, I mean, even though you live maybe in Vallejo, for you to go into San Francisco to a clinic that has, it's faster for them actually to drive up here than it is for them to go down to another city in order to do that.
Yeah.
So, or you live on the border of Oregon, might be easier for you to get to Sacramento than it is to get somewhere in your state.
Let's talk about what that is. What are the services that ALS Association provides? Because they're quite broad in scope.
Yeah. Well, we have 3 pillars. So we touched upon research. So we are funding research globally. We also do advocacy. So we're talking about federal advocacy as well as local California legislature supporting, all of those efforts, with legislature that may affect people living with ALS. And then the final thing is the care services, which is where I've been working for the 15 years that I've been here. And care services are really wraparound services, meaning we're there for whatever the needs may be. So obviously a lot of it is that support aspect, which is going to include giving information, helping educate people. But on top of that, we have, support groups. We have a virtual home modification program to help people figure out, how do I make my home livable if I'm in a wheelchair? One of the huge things that we do is we financially support multidisciplinary care. So this is where a person with ALS would get their medical care. It's very unique in that because ALS is very unique and it affects so many different things, a person with that diagnosis has to be seen by many different specialties. So what a multidisciplinary clinic does is it brings all those disciplines together. Not only does it bring all those individual disciplines, so we're talking the neurologist, the speech therapist, the nutritionist, the physical therapist, the respiratory therapist, the psychologist, all of those, to one appointment, but these are people who are also familiar with ALS, and that's the key. You don't want to be going to someone who's never treated an ALS patient. So if you go to a multidisciplinary clinic, you know that these people know the disease on top of whatever specialty they have.
Well, and not to mention the challenge of if you didn't have it that way, you have to go to 9 different
Exactly.
places with somebody who's basically disabled, newly disabled. You don't know how to function with all this stuff.
Exactly.
How do you get the wheelchair in and out of a car? Can you? Do you have a vehicle? All the elements, the transportation, there's just so many things that impact what this disease causes.
Well, and preparing a patient to go to that many as well. I mean, people don't realize that, oh, you have an 8 o'clock, appointment. Well, you back it out in your head and you're like,
Yes.
okay, I'm probably going to have to get up at about 3:30 in order to make that happen, because you have to get yourself ready, but you're getting them ready as well. And it does take probably about 2 hours. And even, driving there, you're being careful. You're in a handicapped van. You have to lock them down. You're locking them out, trying to find places to park with these big vans. If there's no space available, it's time consuming. So take that and multiply that also by 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And it's a lot.
And you do have some equipment for the patients as well, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
One of the programs we offer is our durable medical equipment and loan program.
Okay.
So the reason we have that is because there are certain pieces of equipment that may not be covered through insurance. And again, if we go back to the fact that this disease is progressive, that means their needs are changing constantly, right?
And they're variable too, correct? So some people may rapidly deteriorate, others may go over a longer period of time.
Yeah, and if you have somebody who is a fast progressor, insurance many times cannot keep up with the progression, because not only do you have to get into the doctor, get, seen, the doctor puts in an order, it goes to your insurance, it has to be approved through insurance. And then it goes to, let's say it's a power wheelchair. Then it goes to, the maker of the wheelchair. They actually have to make that chair to fit your specifications. You can imagine how long it might take, a couple of months minimum. And you might have a patient who needs it today. So what our program does, it fills in those gaps. If you are found to need, we're just going to use the wheelchair example, today, we could get that wheelchair temporarily, a loaner to you today, so that you don't have to wait 2-3 months until yours comes to your home. If it's a piece of equipment that's not covered through insurance, typically anything in the bathroom, insurance will not cover that. They see it as a luxury item. So, equipment to get into the shower, that is not covered with insurance. So we're able to give people those pieces of equipment.
Yeah, the insurance company doesn't recognize what the caregiver needs in order to take care of that particular patient. If it's to help me, so my late husband was 6'1", 195 pounds. He when he became unmanageable then for me, any of those aids, the insurance wasn't going to cover that, but they covered me. The ALS Association's program helped me out.
Okay.
Yeah. All kinds of equipment, including communication equipment.
I was just going to ask.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask.
So most people will, recognize the, Stephen Hawking's name and have heard him speak on, a computerized, device. We've come a long way from that, but those kinds of computers we have in our loan closet. We have anything from basic, posters where you can point to letters to get the message across, to those computerized devices that actually create a voice that speaks for you.
We just had CTEC in here, Communications Technologies.
Yeah, they're one of our partners. We always work with them.
What a perfect segue. I didn't expect it to go this way, but they have the provision for people with disabilities to communicate in so many different ways. What a fascinating conversation it was. Let's take just a minute to hear from the people who make this program possible.
Make our communities bright with Smudge Shine Awards. Now through July 31st, your nonprofit can apply for a chance to receive funding for projects that improve and revitalize communities in our service area. We're seeking proposals that support zero carbon workforce development, environmental justice and equity, inclusive economic growth, and STEM education. Smudge Shine Awards are competitive and funds are limited. Submit your proposal by July 31st. Learn more at smud.org/shine.
I'm thrilled to have Western Health Advantage partnering with us as they do so much to support so many nonprofit agencies in our community. As a truly local health plan, you'll find individual and family options, employer options, plans for CalPERS and Medicare Advantage. From medical services to pharmacy, health and wellness support, as well as behavioral health care, Western Health Advantage has a plan that fits what you need. As an employer, for profit or nonprofit business, individual or family, you can find more at westernhealth.com.
Hello, this is Scott Thomas with Cap Trust in our Sacramento office. I specialize in working with local nonprofits and associations. Annually, we survey private and public nonprofit organizations across the country to better understand challenges they see in today's environment. In our more recent survey, we heard concerns about proper board governance, mission-aligned investment, and how to implement alternative investments. If you would like a copy of the survey or to discuss your organization, look me up, Scott Thomas at captrust.com.
Collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you work with? Who do you find that you work with in the community or the greater region in terms of support for people with the disease?
Yeah. Well, obviously, there are a lot of vendors and companies that we work with, but also other nonprofits, whether it be for something like communication, education. We turn to CTEC for that often. We will post their educational seminars. We also work with organizations like Del Oro, Caregiver Resources, Passages up in the Chico area. Because remember, we cover a lot of counties,
Right.
so there are a lot of different nonprofits that we may be working depending on where we have a need, where we have someone who has a need. I would say our largest collaboration is with our multidisciplinary clinics.
Mm-hmm.
And in this greater Sacramento area, there are 5. So UC Davis, Kaiser, we have the VA. The VA has a ALS clinic. There is a clinic up in the Redding area called Catalyst Neuromuscular. They have a multidisciplinary clinic we're a part of. And then there's one of the oldest clinics, one of the first clinics was Forbes Norris in San Francisco. And they bring their team and do a clinic here.
Mobile? They actually bring it to the community for us to go to them?
Satellite clinic.
Wonderful.
That comes once a month and sees patients in this area. That was all, put together. The satellite clinic came to be years ago when we didn't have anything else in Sacramento. And so, it was a matter of, okay, people are having to drive all the way to San Francisco to be seen. And again, Ann explained how difficult it can be to get to an appointment. So imagine now you're going to San Francisco. It's hard enough for anyone to go into the city, but these appointments can be hours long. You can imagine when you're seeing so many specialists. So people were having to spend the night in a hotel. And so we looked at it and said, we need a clinic here. We need to be able to have people seen here, and worked with Forbes Norris to bring their team here once a month, and they continue to do that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
How about funding? How is the organization funded? Obviously, there's a umbrella of the corporate side of things, the national side of things, but when you get to the local organization, what does that look like?
I think the largest chunk of our funding are donations that come from people who either, have received, the services or know someone who has received the services. That's probably the largest chunk. We also have some grants. Yochadehi, which is a tribe in this
Cache
area.
Creek, correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They have been very generous with us, and we've received several grants from them. Marshall Foundation, Marshall Health,
Medical, okay.
Medical, the Kelly Foundation. We have another partner, M&M Whitmire. It's a family foundation that supports our loan program, our equipment loan program,
Okay.
has for years. Parker Foundation. So
That's
we
wonderful.
receive grants from those, our donations. And then in Sacramento, one of our biggest events is our annual Walk to Defeat ALS. And those happen, the walks happen across the nation. And certainly in Sacramento, it's one of our biggest fundraisers.
Which is great to hear. And that takes place typically in September each year, right?
It's September 21st.
This year, which is 2025 when we're recording it.
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah. September 21st.
We're in front of it. So if anybody has an interest.
Yes, absolutely can reach out to us. Can reach out to Thomas, who coordinates the entire walk. It's a wonderful event. I mean, not only are we raising funds, but we have all of these people coming together for a fun day of just meeting people, getting to see people that you've met before. Maybe you met them last year and now you're seeing them again. Activities, food, obviously the walk, music. It's a very fun event, but doing some important work, raising funds.
It helps. It's a branding element too, because people see the disease visibly.
Yeah.
It gets covered by, media and just the size of the walk. What is that? What are all those people walking for? Well, ALS, what's that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're very visible because they're in their, the patients are in their
chairs.
And last year we had a very memorable moment with a patient who was in a chair, but he was determined to cross the finish line, walking. And his physical therapist, who ironically turned out to be my late husband's physical therapist, he recognized me. They took him, stood him up, and walked him over that line.
Amazing.
It was amazing. An amazing, amazing moment.
It was.
Probably the last time he would ever, be able to do that. But there's so many moments like when you're around everyone.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see some tears,
Of
from
course.
people who have recent losses, looking for, the next step in their lives. And then you see the newly diagnosed who are seeing their future, as they are. They might have only been diagnosed 2 months ago and haven't been to a support group yet and have not seen what the reality looks like. So it's all of those people come together.
Let's take a moment to tangent.
Mm-hmm.
Money's no object. I'm not going to say we're going to cure the disease because the money's no object, but in relationship to the operation here, we've got somebody who says, I want to give you a blank check for this. What would you do with it if I did? What would it look like? And Ann, you can chime in on this too, because as a caregiver, you recognize the support the agency provides. So these things would be great if, and Nancy, obviously, because of your experience, you can say, here's what I would love to see happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. So we're taking a cure off of the table at this point.
We can't do that.
Yes.
Although ideally, we would love to not have this conversation because
Absolutely.
we found an answer. But short of that, because I don't see that coming anytime soon.
Yeah. Or even, treatments that can, help prolong and help people live with the disease. I mean, that'll be the first step.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if we're talking about, what I would like to see for care services, and that's the work that we're doing with the families, I think it would have to be around support for caregiving. It's one of the biggest needs and something that isn't covered. And it's interesting because as a population who, most people may not have to deal with the caregiving or, deal with it in a different way than, with ALS. What I find is that when people call us, they expect that, well, I live in this country. Of course, there's going to be support for me, in the caregiving arena. And there really isn't. And Medicare doesn't pay for caregiving. If you are, lucky enough to have purchased insurance policy for long-term care, or you're a veteran, or even if you are eligible for Medi-Cal, then you may have some financial assistance from Medicare, but outside of that, there is no assistance. So that means that your loved ones are caring for you. And in many situations, that's the spouse, and the spouse is caring for you by themselves and may not have breaks. And so just being able to help people with that so that they are able to afford assistance with caregiving, to give them breaks, it's a devastating disease. Physically devastating, emotionally devastating,
Financially, in some cases, I'm sure,
financially
yes.
devastating. And so to be able to help people with that financial part of it, I think would be my, on the top of my list.
And Mike, I have just a quick story there. I did have I got to a point in the last year where I needed to have some help, and I had a caregiver for 30 hours a week. When she left on Friday at 3 p.m., I knew that until Monday at 9 a.m., it was all me. And I used to close the door, and then I would sit down on my stairs were right next to it. I would sit down next to that. I just take a deep breath, fighting the urge to just panic and cry, and then just walk in and say, I'm coming, so that he would know that I was there. So it is critical to be able to provide support. And if you can provide that extra little bit of help for somebody down the road, very, very important. I would also wish for more of our patients to be able to participate in clinical trials, because clinical trials happen all across the United States. And there may be that they're the ones that are here in California. I mean, if you're here up in Northern California and the trial's down in Southern California, that's a lot. And there's no insurance company that's going to pay for that. So you're going to be shouldering, the transportation costs. And maybe they're not ready. There's one, across the country. Just being able to get a patient there, that we need patients, because we don't have enough of them, I think, that are going into trials. I mean, I still read some of the legislation that's going through. I still read about some of the clinical trials, and it just scares me when I see there's only 4 in the trial. What does that mean?
In which we were talking about before we got started. The trials are so small, there are not enough people to get enough data to say we see something, or a pattern or anything. You need, at least hundreds, if not thousands.
And you have to get them in the beginning of the disease, because at the end of the disease, they're not going to be able to.
Right. Right. So the caregiver element, and I want to phrase this because I want people to hear who possibly are listening, say, I think I can help here some way, shape, or form. We're not going to get a blank check, I don't think, but just to the extent of that's where that, not only is that the umbrella dream, if we could, is to really support the caregivers, but I would imagine that might even be the greatest need, which is, our next question of once we come out of the unlimited, well, now we are limited. What does it look like? What is the greatest need?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, greatest need. I mean, there are so many needs. But again, I think the panic that I hear in people's voices when they realize I'm all my spouse or my father or mother has in terms of, caregiving is heartbreaking, because they're looking at you like, I can't do this by myself. Please help me. So for those of us who work in caregiving, and we've had to address that and talk with people who are exhausted and don't know where to turn anymore. So yeah, that's huge. I have to agree, the clinical trials are the only way that we're going to be able to get to, approving drugs that are either helping with the progression or curing this disease. So absolutely, that is a humongous need. It's really hard to pinpoint just one thing. There's so many issues that we are needing to address when somebody's diagnosed with this. But I think I have to stick with the caregiving needs, helping family manage that.
And that's acceptable. People can wrap their head around that. And sometimes it's a little bigger. Well, we need this and this and this, these medical devices. And it's like, I'm not quite sure what that looks like. Everybody knows what caregiving means.
Yeah.
We've all done it in some way, shape, or form.
But there's small things, too, that would make a difference, too. I remember I had to move to a new house. And I was still working full time, as was my husband, Jay. And I looked at my floor, and my floor hadn't been mopped in 3 months, and you can imagine what it looked like. And someone who I worked with just said, you know, my daughter is going to come over to your house and she's going to come take care of that for you. That was the most amazing little thing, was to finally see in my new home, and his home, we both were very nice, neat, clean people looking at this. And she came and she did that. It's those little small things. Somebody coming over just out of the blue, and they had gone to a deli and bought us just a whole smattering of things and said, put this in your refrigerator so that you guys have something. It didn't matter that they didn't know that Jay couldn't eat probably half of that because his muscles in his throat wouldn't allow. That was okay. It was there. It was the thought. So all those little things are just picking up the phone at night, just saying, hey, Ann, just thinking of you and Jay right. And that's it.
And the value of a volunteer.
Yes, absolutely. That's where I was segueing, because I said I would like to see 5,000 people at our walk on September 21st, because this is how you meet the families and you hear a little bit about their story. You see a mom there with a young child. And I think 2 years ago we had someone, and she was expecting twins, and her husband was diagnosed with ALS. Looking at that family and just saying, what's one small little thing that I could do to make them smile?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great point, because we do rely on volunteers so much, and there's so many different things at different levels that volunteers can do. I mean, they can be on our leadership council. Ann was on our board for many years, but they can also do things like help somebody with, a move that they have, or, one of the huge needs we have is getting equipment to people if they're not able to come pick it up at our office.
Point A to point B.
We rely on volunteers to get this piece of equipment to the home of, the person who needs it. So all kinds of things like that a volunteer can do.
How many people do you employ?
Well, here just in the Sacramento area, in the Sacramento area, we have 5.
Okay. Which is a lot of work for 5 people.
And 5, but they're not all care services.
Oh, even more work. Okay.
Yeah.
In the scope of things, you're a region leader, 24 counties. You've got a lot of stuff on your plate on a day-to-day job basis. And you hear these emotional stories from people all the time. How do you take a break? What's a hobby for you? How do you release from it?
Yeah. Well, I learned a long time ago going into, social services right out of college and always doing nonprofit work. I learned a long time ago, I think it was my mother who told me my very first job, you need to figure out how to separate from this when you're home, because you cannot continue like this.
You can't take it home every day and live with everybody's problems.
No,
otherwise you do become.
Yeah. And I was doing something very different, working with children back then. I will say that the work that I've done for the ALS Association has been the most rewarding work that I've done, because it's very, your impact is so tangible. Like, you can see the impact that you're having. You can see the need that's there, and that you have a way of, addressing those needs. Not all the needs, but obviously, many of the needs. So it's fulfilling work. I don't want you to think that, it's, it just brings me down, or that,
No.
I have to.
15 years, I suspect that there's some
it's very fulfilling
value
work
in it that keeps you going.
And we have moments that just like replenish you. And those moments are not, it doesn't have to be a specific thing that happens, but it can be just facilitating a support group. Those are some of the times that I felt the most fulfilled. Like, I would finish a support group, get in my car, and just feel good for the rest of the day, because people connected. People were getting help for some of the things that they felt there was no help for. They now made a new friend. They found a way to get a need met through somebody else who knows somewhere. So there are many of those moments. I mean, yes, I have a family. I have lots of things I do outside of my work that help me. But, I have to say that I always feel good about the work that we're doing And that just keeps me going.
And Ann, if I could ask,
Why do I keep coming back?
no, actually, I wasn't going to. I want to go a little bit different on that. As a caregiver, having seen and been through it, and now obviously on the other side of it, maybe some words of caution or advice to those in that space today who have their journey still cut out for them.
Actually, that happens quite frequently. When we're at the walk, we have a section, a booth, and it's a program through our walk called Unlock ALS. We're trying to unlock why this is happening and how do we defeat it. And there you'll get new patients who have lost someone in their lives, and one of their questions is, does it ever get better?
Mm-hmm.
And my answer is, I can't promise you that it'll get better, but what I can tell you is that it will be different. Life will be different. I love to travel. I can't go anywhere in the world without looking at another country and looking at, wow, where do the chairs go? How would you get a wheelchair up there? How can a person step off a curb? 14 years later, since Jay has passed,
Mm-hmm.
I still have that in my mind. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing. So it stays with you, but it will be different.
Mm-hmm.
I said life will go on.
Just differently.
Just different.
How does one find out about the organization? What's the best way to learn more about the disease?
Mm-hmm.
And let's say somebody has somebody in their circle that has the disease and they want to know more about it or has just been diagnosed. Where do they go? What do they do?
Yeah. Well, we have a great website, als.org. And not
just
only
that simple,
als.org.
www.als.org.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. And not only is it full of information for someone who's just trying to figure out, like, where do I go next, but there's a huge educational component in it as well. So for people who are already registered with us, who have, are working through the progression, there are all kinds of educational recorded videos of trainings that can help with caregiving, how to transfer somebody, all nutrition, all kinds of things. So that's the best thing. If you're in Sacramento, you probably have noticed our huge sign at our office off of Sunrise. We get people who just stop by because they see the sign. But I would say our website is the best way.
And then drill down and find that phone number for the Sacramento office, and just don't be afraid to pick up the phone and just say, I've recently been diagnosed with ALS. I need help.
And I'm sure there's those moments of desperation. Oh my gosh, now what?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there is, an oasis somewhere in the desert of unfamiliarity where you can actually grasp and get some answers, if nothing else.
Exactly. Yeah. And know that there are people there who are going to help you and, that you're not alone.
Right. Well, ALS is a frightening diagnosis, no cure, and a known progression, which is really disturbing for some people. But keeping one's motivation, both caregiver and patient, it can be so very difficult, as we've just heard, and from your experience, and certainly, Nancy, from numbers and numbers of people that you deal with.
Mm-hmm.
The organization is truly a godsend for the families that are affected by this disease, and your work is absolutely incredible. And you came back
I did.
to participate.
I've never left.
So to you, your team, to your board leadership council, thank you for what you guys do. Thank you for the opportunity to share the story today for the people who are going to be dealing with this condition at some point in time. And for those who are, the benefit that you're providing, whether it be transportation, whether it be just information, whether it be access to clinics or communication devices, thank you. We appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk about it. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for having us.
So very, very welcome. Thank you for listening to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If what you heard moved you, please reach out to that organization and do what you can to help. If you like and appreciate what we're doing to support local nonprofits, please give us a positive review, subscribe, and share. If you're a nonprofit with an interest in participating in an episode, you can reach me at jeff@hearmenowstudio.com. Once again, we're We're grateful for the businesses who have made this program possible. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations. You can find them in Sacramento, Roseville, and Folsom. captrust.com. SMUD Shine Awards, helping support our nonprofit community with grants for more efficient energy usage. smud.org/shine. And Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. westernhealth.com.